Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Today's topic is a global overview of HSR development. So I just want to quickly remind you about what I was talking about yesterday. I introduced the general concept of infrastructure systems, very conceptual. This is the system as it relates to HSR, high-speed rail systems. So you have many components and many complicated parts of the system interacting together. And then I described 50, 60 years of history very briefly about Japan's journey and how they decided to develop, and then they rapidly expanded their high-speed rail network. And then in current day now, there are different challenges that they face and that they need to manage with different parts of this HSR system. Not just technology, but human resources or policy or regulatory as well. We thought about how many stakeholders are involved in a high-speed rail project or infrastructure in general, and tried to think about what it meant for each stakeholder, what's good for the government, what is good for the financer, what is good for the engineer or the contractor. And that discussion was helping us understand complexity and how it relates to the projects. And then I gave a couple specific examples, some history about the Canadian Railway, financial risk blowing up in the government's face by promising too much in the finance bonds. And then briefly talked about demand risk in that the Japanese early lines were enjoying pretty high demand, but some of the other lines not so much. And Will talk a little bit more about demand risk today as well in specificity. Today I will try to give more examples of each of these components of the system and specific risks occurring or specific ways you can successfully manage that risk by leveraging parts of the system and through some examples, not just in Japan, but in other countries as well. And of course, because by nature of the country or the context or the social context, the risks or the challenges each country or system will face are different. And so, again, I hope we can try to have an interesting discussion about maybe we have the same problems in India, so we can learn similar lessons, or maybe we have different problems in India. And does that mean we need new solutions, or does that mean we can still learn from lessons in the past and avoid these lessons? We can avoid these risks if we know that they might occur in India as well. So these will be examples of risk management specific to the high-speed rail. Yesterday, I started with a story about how the Shinkansen developed. So this is the same story once again, but in the framework, I'll talk about it by zooming in here on the system development. So why is this important for HSR systems? Quite a lot of the literature or the content to follow comes from these textbooks, actually, these publications from the Asian Development Bank Institute. So the Asian Development Bank is a multilateral finance institution that's headquartered in Asia, in the Philippines. But they also have a think tank. So they have a bank that's in charge of financing and implementing infrastructure projects. But they also have a research arm that's in charge of conducting research on policy and where those investments should go. And the institute is based in Japan, in Tokyo, and Professor Nikhil did an internship where you were just helping out, consulting, working with them there, helping with many of these publications.
And these are free to download?
Oh yes, open access, free to download, and a lot of it has to do with the ADBs motivated to also help developing countries such as and India develop their infrastructure systems more efficiently by learning from these lessons. Handbook on high-speed rail and quality of life. So it's not just about technology. We can directly improve people's quality of life through infrastructure investments, including high-speed rail, frontiers in high-speed rail developments, a more technological perspective, and policy messages for planning and implementing high-speed rail in Asia. Okay. So, all right, yeah, we see a lot of IIT alumni being involved in these publications as well. But yes, if you're interested in these, please download them and go through them. If you want a recommendation and things, we can also fill in the details about the background of these publications as well. This is the current state of global development in high-speed rail. I am talking about Japan quite a bit, but Japan is just not even half the story. This is the development of kilometers built of high-speed rail. It's stagnated, obviously. Well, as I mentioned yesterday, the Japanese market is not exactly growing, so there's not much demand for it anyways. The population is shrinking. There is some tourism that they want to help through high-speed rail, but we're no longer really expanding the system. We're making it more efficient or effective, but not so much expanding it. So it's not getting longer. Europe is a massive market of multiple countries that need to integrate and connect. So this is the European presence. Korea is catching up, and the monolith or the giant Chinese market. They are by far the largest leader in HSR construction and development in present day. Over 10 times as much as Spain, which has the second longest network at 3,300. So over 30,000 kilometers, which is amazing. Especially considering it's started probably in 2008. Yeah, only not even 2 decades. And the speed of which is unprecedented. So we did mention this, somebody mentioned this a little bit yesterday about if you look at the long-term global competition and how countries rise and fall, India will find itself on this chart in no time. That's my opinion. But one of the famous railway engineers in Japan, who was a professor of mine maybe 10 years ago, he worked for Japan Rail in the 80s and 90s and was a big part of the high quality rail alignment, which is integral to reaching the high speeds. And he remembers being invited by the Americans to give a talk on how to engineer high quality railway alignments. He remembers growing up learning about the war and how Japan lost the war, became, had to pay its reparations and apologetic, and then was far behind, dependent on American sort of market and business. But within 2 or 3 decades, now the Japanese engineers have to teach the American engineers how to achieve high-speed rail. And I remember him talking about how fast you can lose competition, right? And how you become the teacher. So I definitely think right now China has lessons to be taught and experiences that need to be shared over there. Back to Japan, which is what I'm more comfortable probably describing. The International High-Speed Rail Association is a very cool, I would say, not database, but a source of information about the global situation, as well as just Japan. So this is a map from them talking about all the different companies that are part of the high-speed rail network in Japan. We talked a little bit about this during the break yesterday, but some of you weren't in that conversation. But so Japan Rail used to be Japan National Rail, so it was a national company, similar to India Rail would be right now. And then they were in charge of developing and maintaining and operating these lines. It was privatized in the 80s. Sorry, almost 85. But the structure of privatization was to break up the whole national railway into regional lines. So these are companies that are in charge of specific regions of the country. So you would, I think something, it would be like, I guess, states in India probably splitting up an HSR line and then creating an organization that's in charge of that region. So the one we were talking about yesterday, the first one is the orange one here, Tokaido Shinkansen. This was the relatively successful line that was built first, connecting Tokyo as well as Yokohama, which is another very big city, with Nagoya, home to Toyota and other large companies, and Osaka, which is the commercial center of Japan as well. So this is, lots of demand, lots of people want to be connected here, and that's definitely part of why this line was successful. And then after that, what was it? Sanyo, further west?
Extension.
Yeah, extension keeps going west, Sanyo, and then a little bit northeast, Tohoku, northeastern Japan. There are other big industries in these regions as well, and then northern Japan, central northern, and then northern Japan of Hokkaido. And then we're trying to connect by slowly but surely trying to connect the other regions as well, southern Japan. Okay. I have been on most of these, I think. I'll talk about this later, but they have they have a lot of benefits and sort of campaigns for students and international tourists, where you don't get to ride the super fast train, but you can ride some of the local ones that stop more often for as much as you want. You pay maybe like 10,000 rupees-ish or something like that, and you get a 1 week all-you-can-ride pass for these kinds of services. So again, we recommend the International High-Speed Rail Association for lots of secondary sources of data and more context about high-speed rail development. Okay. Yesterday, we were also talking about the goodness. What is good for you at that time will change and can change. So at the beginning, we wanted to connect Tokyo with western sort of Osaka, Nagoya area. That was the purpose of development. That's the justification of this line. And you have tons of ridership here. The bars correspond with how many annual riders we'll have on the HSR. And then once it's established and obviously successful, like I said, other regions start hearing about it and they say, well, why don't we get a high-speed railway line? We want that kind of connectivity. Then the government, if you can pressure the governments into that sort of mindset, the government priority then becomes not connectivity, but access to the network. So, okay, now we have to worry about connecting the other regions for fairness or for other reasons. Getting access to this network becomes a priority rather than just making sure this line succeeds. So then you get, it's very much filtered. It's a dispersed network flowing in towards the demand. Let's see, Tokaido, 366,000 passengers a day. I guess that sounds like a lot for Japan. I don't know if, in terms of scale, if that's impressive from an Indian perspective. Have you any numbers about metro ridership or anything off the top of your head, like per year or per day or? Oh, that's not. Oh, but Shinjuku Station does 2 million a day. So, okay, that's pretty. Yeah, sometimes I forget how impressive Japanese.
Is really much, the number would be much larger.
Even bigger, right? Yeah. Okay. So again, we have to remember these are regional. Your high speed, as in you're going to the next state or you're going to the next city. So these aren't daily commuters, but the demand is quite high as of 2022. Okay, it's very common for us as academics or business people to travel, to make a day trip to Osaka or to the northern part of Japan and go back home by the end of the night.
So just to give the perspective, Tokyo to Osaka distance is about 550 kilometers, which is the same distance between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. And you can actually go in the morning, finish your work, and be back in Tokyo in the night. That's the beauty. It takes about 2 hours, 30 minutes to travel from Tokyo to Osaka, a distance of 550 kilometers. And you see the peak time train frequency, in an hour, 17 trains goes from Tokyo to Osaka, and similarly Osaka to Tokyo. So that's like every 4 minute, 5 minute, you are getting a train to travel 500 kilometers. So it's amazing in that sense. Mumbai, no network in the world compares to that efficiency and that transport volume that they handle in that way. Yeah. So just to put that thing into perspective. Yeah. Ticket price is, if I remember, about 13,000 yen, was it?
For one way?
For one way. So that would be about 6,500, about 8,000 rupees. This was back in 6-7 years ago. Could be more expensive, a little bit more expensive now. Reasonably well affordable from the Japanese living standards, I suppose.
Yes. I mean, and again, those are different markets. If you're thinking tourism or business travel, a company is willing to pay maybe that much for you to go to a meeting, or and the just corporate finance structure in general in Japan is there's lots of the companies pay for travel and commuting. It's covered as part of your benefits usually, so it's not considered sort of an expense in many cases, which is actually an exercise I'll ask you to do later on. So system development. Japan had that sort of a story about, okay, let's proof of concept Tokyo and Osaka, and then now everybody else wants access to this. Regional, let's do this regionally, and then it went from national to private. How do we create the organizations? Okay, now it's regional companies. This is the story of the development of this train line in Japan. So it would be different in China, it would be different in Europe. What is it going to be? What's the story going to be in India? The next topic, I'm going to zoom in on operations management a little bit more. So this is more directly to do with the number of services I think that you're giving. So yesterday's talk on demand risk that I mentioned at the end is mostly to do, I would say, with this operations management and how much service are you going to provide. Okay. The Tokaido Shinkansen, I just mentioned, the orange here. So these were the demand numbers that I showed yesterday. First couple of years, they were below estimates, and I guess maybe a little bit scared, but whether or not they were going to reach their projected ridership goals, but very quickly they surpassed their estimates and were very quickly able to make their money back on this investment, or pay back the investors at least. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. It should be almost 60 years now.
Yeah. 50 would be 2014.
2014 was the 50th anniversary. Yeah, so 60-year anniversary coming up now. So they'll probably have another celebration or some more publications talking about this. Relative transport volume is a number that means, I'm sorry, what was the?
So we set a reference of 100 in year 2. This is not absolute number.
Yeah.
This is relative to one specific year.
Yes, okay. But you're aiming for 100, and you're above that number. Oops. So Tokyo and Osaka was a great success. Government decided that they want to replicate that success in other regions, and the relative number there is not. It wasn't actually sufficient for their early estimates. So some of the northern companies, the northernmost company, you'll see in Hokkaido, this one defaulted or had to, I forget if they declared bankruptcy or it's been rescued by the government, as well as the southernmost companies also are not operating on profit currently. So it makes us think again about what would make you want to take the high-speed rail. I want to continue the discussion about demand risk, essentially, that we were having at the end of yesterday, by once again just having a group discussion about demand factors that affect demand. Okay, so we are hoping the high-speed rail will succeed in India. Let's say we're the planning or the engineers or the operators. We have to think about what would make someone want to take this train. Or what do we have to offer through our service? How do we induce demand, for example? So it's not just about assuming that the riders will be there. We have to think about why they want to take this service in the first place. So what would make someone want to use high-speed rail? What is the user's expectations? What are you demanding from them? Another more specific way maybe to think about this question that I would like you to discuss is what are the conditions that must be met for you to even consider using high-speed rail? Okay? Let's try and come up with some ideas. Again, and hopefully, I'm not saying there's a right answer. I want to get a diversity of ideas from you about this discussion. But yeah, could you share some what issues you were talking about, or if you had difficulty or anything?
Yeah. So what initially we discuss is that each three question have its own meaning. Like if we say the first question is what makes someone want to use. So it's like a individual driven. So what the first point we discuss is there is a trade-off of one is life cycle demand, time and the cost. So one which effectively balance these three options, life cycle, time and demand, those people can choose it. Means there are some alternative routes as well from air travel to bus travel, where air travel you can go faster, in bus travel you can go slower. So your high speed rail is kind of a middle option where you can do a trade-off between time and cost, where you want to spend more then go to air. If you want to spend 1 hour more and 2000 some rupees less, then you can use that the high speed rail. Other is if some high speed, so suppose there is a two city, like you have a Mumbai city and a greater Mumbai city, which is somewhere near to greater Mumbai, but accessibility is problem. If you want to expand this newly built city which is near to your main city, then this high speed rail can be a option where it can shift all the industrial sector or economic sector into the greater Mumbai city sort of thing, where this the main city and this greater Mumbai city can be connected via high speed rail, because people want that specific accessibility. So that I understand, that we understand from the first question.
For the second point, I think that was interesting. So there's a Mumbai and a greater Mumbai,
Mumbai is right now 3 Mumbai.
Okay.
One is a Mumbai, Navi Mumbai and the greater Mumbai.
Okay.
So as the time passes, they come up with the different
All right.
expansion.
Okay. So the newer part is industrial expansion and development, I guess? Okay.
Yes.
So they would want to be connected to the old, the original Mumbai, I guess? And then you try and connect those with, okay. But the distance is not too far?
But in that case, distance is around, we can say it ranges from 50 to 70 kilometer, like that.
Say suppose Mumbai already has 2 or 3 CBDs. Say suppose now if you take in the state of Gujarat or something, there are not new gift cities which are being developed. So say suppose like already Mumbai is overcrowded and all. We need to shift the CBD on the industrial pressure from one state to another state. Just distributing it. So say I try to develop a CBD in another state, say another part of one's region where only it is not being developed because of the connectivity issue. Like in Mumbai, there are a lot of transportations which are already developed, say local trains, metros, roads, everything is there. But in other cities, that is one of the issue. Like they have to always be relying to the road network. They do not have internal local networks of railways and all. So that is why the pressure on Mumbai is building too much. So if we try to shift the CBD only somewhere else and it is connected by high speed railway. So say internally in Mumbai, if you're taking Navi Mumbai to Mumbai, you take almost average of 1.5 hour to 2 hours you travel daily. A normal person travel daily. But if same thing, if he's able to, with the high speed network, if he's able to travel to another state, so the distance and all also gets reduced. Like that way the industrial pressure on one state also get
Okay,
shifted.
okay. Yes, yes. That's very interesting. Okay, that's great. So the key, I think what's interesting here is there's two dimensions of, or two ways of looking at accessibility and demand as well. So are you trying to connect two cities so they can use it, or are you trying to release pressure from an oversaturated, too much demand in one place? You can use this to release pressure from there and improve services or
Yeah, and both the
or
cities can
connectivity.
develop economically as well.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah. Efficient redistribution is a key concept, I think, in regional development as well. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's switch to the next group and maybe go back. I want you to comment on each other's comments as well.
Actually, we from our group, the first question we thought like, what makes to use HSR? Like, so the first thing we thought is job. For the purpose of going to job, the people will use the HSR. Then for education purpose, the students of the colleges, schools, they may use the HSRs. And the third thing is for tourism. Tourist people, they will use the HSR. So then apart from that, to maintain the work-life balance,
Okay.
so that we can daily meet our families and we can go to our works in the correct time. So there will be a proper work-life balance. So for that purpose, the people who are using that HSRs may try to go for it. Right. So proper work-life balance. So these are our answers for the first question.
Yes.
So shall I continue for the second
yes,
one?
yes, please. Okay. Yeah, we can move on.
Yeah, the next is about the expectation and demand. So in that, the expectation, the demand main thing is for safety for women, and then regarding the comfortability and the stability. As we will travel in metro, we will face some instability while the stoppages and all coming. So that stability and the maintenance and yes, the maintenance. And the next thing is about the communication and announcement. The announcement should be clear to all the people who are using that HSR railway. Senior citizen, kids, or whoever it is, non-educated, differently challenged persons. For everyone, it should be comfortable and they should be clear about it. And then the next is about the connectivity.
So for third question, the condition that should be met to use HSR is somewhat same with the expectations from our point of view. So that condition, the first and important condition is ticket price should be reasonable. Daily commuters, those who are going for job or education purpose, they can travel to and fro.
Okay. Excellent. Do you want to add anything to this one here? Please, use the mic. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Other thing which we were discussing that suppose a scenario where one state economy is very dependent on the another state. So if we want to make a interstate business economic cluster, then two states will be connected by this kind of rail, where this economic and business cluster.
What do you think? Like we want access to the IT parks in Bangalore or something like that, I guess? Or, I mean,
Yes, maybe.
What kind of situation do you imagine?
Yes. So in my case, so in what happens in the Mumbai Ahmedabad route, Mumbai is a one center for a diamond industry, same as a Surat, but the distance between them is 350 kilometer, which is not that much accessible via normal route. So one after effect of that can be happen that diamond clusters will grow. I mean, people will frequently transfer from Surat to Mumbai like that. Right now, it is taking more than 4.5 hours between both via normal route, normal trains, maybe 4 to 5 hours. So this kind of, but both are very nearer. If those like textile, in terms of the textile market, Mumbai is a one hub for textile. The second is Ahmedabad. So it is also one hub for textile. So when the two states economy is very linked to each other, then link via high speed rail can be an option where people can travel frequently. Like the Tokyo and Osaka, the same
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
Yes, excellent. Okay, yes. Very good. Yeah, one.
Like expectation and essential. So essentials like cleanliness, safety as they've mentioned already, and security. These three are like it is must. Like you can't compromise on that even based on the pricing or anything. These are the basic things which should be there. Expectation when you say for now currently if you see the internet is required everywhere. So that internet connectivity also is a must in this days.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, people would be very upset if there's no Wi-Fi anywhere.
So like even
I
if they
think
don't
now.
want to waste their 2 hours in something useful if they could do.
Okay, okay. I feel like you've taken this course before, and like all of the key concepts are being brought up without my help. So, this is. I'm happy that I think what we're talking about is relevant, and you sense it. You sense that it's going to be important. Comfort. Sorry. So I'm very happy that a lot of these keywords came up because we will be talking about these directly. And then only some of these we've put in the model so much, but that will also help because what I think is also interesting to consider is that Professor Nika was only able to model certain parts of it. But if we understand how the system is structured, it means there's lots of research potential to try and model other parts of this system. The next couple slides are going to talk about some of these topics directly. So a lot of good points were brought up. Time and cost trade-off. So how much are you going to pay? How much are you willing to pay? How much is time worth to you? It depends on the person, and as well as somebody mentioned, it would depend on if you're a working professional or if you're a student, if you're elderly, if you're a child. You have to have different pricing schemes for these kinds of users, and all of those will contribute to a work-life balance, or how people decide to organize their day because they're spending a significant amount of time for this. Basic expectations of safety, maintenance, cleanliness, gender issues as well. Does India have the women-only trains, carriage? Yeah. So I think I did meet a Japanese government official who said that they suggested that as part of a consulting idea. So it's very common in Japan as well. Overcrowded trains in the morning. A lot of sexual harassment was happening. So during peak hours, they'll have dedicated carriages just for women and children. But not in high-speed rail because it's ticketed seating. So that you won't see that with overcrowding. I thought this was interesting as well. The communication of information effectively is not something that Japan does too well, in my opinion. You get used to it. Once you get familiar with the system, you understand that the train is coming in 2 minutes, and then you can find your way. But sometimes it's quite difficult to manage the complexity of the existing and other modes. They all converge in one station, and it gets very complicated very quickly. We'll talk about that as well. Accessibility to other parts. What's interesting to think about for economic clusters or deciding which city gets a stop, gets a station, is actually a very political problem for many developers. It's like why does the high-speed rail get to stop at that station and not at our station? And sometimes it has to do with land, and sometimes it has to do with your local politician's ability to get involved in the design process and say no. We deserve to be connected. But in Japan, you even have quiet cities that are not industrial saying we don't want to be connected. Leave it out of our city. You'll find You can also find power groups in Japan trying to block development to protect environmental space as well. What else was there? Intermodal, what was I going to say? Yeah, and ticket price. Ticket price is something we model directly, which we will talk about, and how that affects the demand, or how that will affect the frequency of service as well. Okay, yeah, I think this is very, I feel like I'm forcing you to prove that our content is relevant, but I guess it's not. So a lot of, depending on who you are, depending on where you're coming from, what you want from the service will change, and what you want. And from an operator perspective, that will impact how we are prepared to offer you services, right? We have to offer you lots of different services. It wasn't all golden glory for Japan. It was quite successful early on, but this is a chart showing delays in the Shinkansen operations over time. Today, somebody mentioned the frequency. It has to be convenient and frequent at least. Today, yeah, sometimes I forget how amazing the Japanese Shinkansen service is. It will say train departs at 2:47. You're like 2:47. What's 2:47 is so? And you'll get on the platform. It's like 2:46, and there's nobody there. There's no train. There's nothing. And then 2:46 and 15 seconds, you see the train coming, and then it arrives, and you're like, there's no way we're leaving at 2:47. And then you get on the train, and then even before you like put your seat down or you put your luggage away, it's already moving 2:47. It's exactly on the dot every single time. I think you have the average delay numbers, or I forget, I don't know.
In Japan, it's less than 30 seconds.
Yeah, the definition of delay. Annually, there's no delay over 30 seconds on average, right? Including natural disasters where they have to stop the train because there's an earthquake or a typhoon or a flood. So because there's 17 a day, for example, just on one line, earthquake will probably only affect one of those and not the rest.
There are different definitions of calculating delays in railways across the world, and Japan measures at each station. So train leaving time versus scheduled departure time, and that gets accumulated. So that reflects into the total journey time also, but a lot of time countries only mention intermediate stations they don't even care about. They just care about the top and down. So a lot of time trains would catch up, especially for example, if you travel from any train to Chennai, their arrival time will be 7:30, but the train would reach outer at 5 o'clock, and then 2.5 hours it's just staying there. So it doesn't get delayed, right? So Indigo in airlines also use this condition that they'll announce time like 2 hours, but actual journey time is maybe 1 hour 15 minutes, and therefore they are not counted delays. So yeah, there's no international standard law, but Japan measures it each station departure times. Yeah. And India does not have a formal definition, but less than 5 minutes, I think we don't even call it as a delay event. In Europe also, less than a minute, you don't even call it as a delay event, right? So that's the definition part also. Yeah.
And I don't want to say there's never any delays ever. The high-speed rail is probably the most top-performing transportation organization in Japan as well. Delays are quite common in some of the local lines and some of the express trains. But maybe not as common as other countries. You get used to the punctuality. And we actually have some experience interviewing the JR officials when we were asking them how they achieve such high performance, and we'll talk about how we tried to model that as well. But that's not necessarily the purpose of this chart I'm trying to show you, actually. So the performance is actually also very dependent upon the organizational structure. This is the message we're trying to convey here. In the 60s and 70s, they were enjoying quite a lot of success in operating the lines with very few delays. But what happened in the 70s, was the expansion period, and a lot of their resources had to go into constructing and expanding new lines. So at this point, you're kind of stretching your resources a little bit thin, and you can imagine if your organization is not prepared, or you just have to invest a lot of human resources as well when you start expanding. Existing services can suffer. There was a lot of debt as well here, so the companies had to start consolidating and cutting budgets and spending less. So this naturally led to a lot of other delays, disaster related, not only, but staff related. I believe this is where they also unionized. Okay, was that? I would say the unionization was in response to almost these cost cutting measures that were probably happening.
I'm not sure the history.
Okay, yeah. And then in the 80s, 84, sorry, you just said this, but 84 they privatized again.
87.
Or 87, sorry.
87.
Oh, 85, 87. So I guess they managed to get it under control, but oh, actually, no. This is when they started a different financing mechanism. Oh, sorry. No, well, basically, the JR company, the National Rail had a lot of financial trouble in the 70s. And you will find that just looking at the delay numbers, it has a direct impact on the quality of services. In this case, timely passenger transport. Okay, so that's an example of operating things on the technical side by offering services. But if you're, as an organization, if you start struggling financially, that will obviously impact how you pay your people or how they can manage the field. The project level or the service level human resources are impacted by financial resources as well, and their ability to provide proper operations and maintenance. As I just said, we were fortunate enough to get introduced to one of the HSR operators that were in charge of the schedules between, that was JR East, right? Yes. So this is the one that I showed you, Tokyo, Osaka, basically. How many, like Professor Nicol just said, 366,000 passengers a day, 17 or 18 on one line every day. How many people do you think are managing the schedule for Japan Rail? Just, you can shout some estimated numbers. How many people do you think are on that team? Let's say at least 100. Maybe raise your hand. And then who thinks it's less or more than 100? More than 100? More than? Okay, it's less than 100. So we'll say 50 to 100 people. 50 to 100 people. Less than 50 people? Yeah? Maybe? Okay. Yeah? All right. Everywhere? So we went in, they had multiple teams in charge of, well, actually, I guess we'll talk about this here, but I think it was like 16, it was like 13 or 14 people in charge of the entire service. And they were constant data coming in about passenger numbers, schedules, delays, reasons for delays. For the entire line, for the entire network schedule, yes. Which was amazing to see how they separate the teams. Okay, so our goal here in this model was trying to show how it was even possible for them to keep that many trains operating on time all of the time. So part of the basic services, I think, that we all demand or we expect from a high-speed rail or any transportation service is you want relatively stable, frequent, and not, punctual services, right? If you can't rely on them to take you where you want to go, If they're late every day, you're going to stop. You'll find another way to use, another way to get to your destination. So this was a model that Professor Nicol developed to describe how delays were happening in the Shinkansen. Let's see, where should I start? Delay management is used primarily using passenger information. If a delay occurs, you want to reduce the delay. Let's see. There were, what was interesting to see was that information being communicated to the passengers is an important element of delay reduction. You need to be able to tell the passengers how long they have to wait so that connectivity can happen, because they may have to get on another train to get to their final destination. So that was very important. They have a separate team waiting for confirmation from the results of the scheduling team to say, okay, when can we tell them how long it's going to be to get to their next destination. Once a delay occurs, primary delay occurs, they have to make sure that that train is safe, or it's not an accident. And the primary goal is to make sure that train gets to its final destination at least. Once that is taken care of, you have to work on the secondary delays and reducing the delays that dissipate into the network. But there were various reasons as to why delays happened. I remember thinking it was mostly probably to do with natural disasters, maybe rain or earthquakes or storms. Interesting to learn that day that the majority of delays were caused by passenger trouble. So passengers and passengers maybe having a disagreement, or someone dropped their bag, or someone forgot something and stopped the train. These are the day-to-day problems that lead to more delays rather than a technical problem. So in the end, it is much to do about your client and your user. Okay, so again, I think the biggest lesson for us here was that the technology is important, yes, but it was 12 or 13 people working with extremely high teamwork and communication ability. So human resources and the human factor, the teamwork and the management capability of the engineers was, if not more important than the technology that was supporting those decisions. So that's an argument against purely just importing something. You need the human capability and the experience to be able to use that technology properly, or else it's not going to help. You can't just throw technology at a problem like that. Yes, in Japan, the question was, are there intermodal delays considered in the delay mechanism? And the answer is yes. It's mostly, they're most concerned about the possible last trip that they're going to make. There's enough options in between that they trust the Japanese commuter to figure it out. They just have to make sure that if your last destination is here, they will at least have the final option to make it to their final destination. That's how they calculate how much they will ask the next train company to delay their connecting trains. Yeah. So most of the intermodal negotiations happen at the end of the day. I would say otherwise, in between, it's not so much of an issue.
If you see the railway line that goes from Tokyo to Osaka and all the way to the Hiroshima part, that's actually one single line, but operated by two different operators. So it's a very interesting way how they coordinate. Till Osaka, it's the JR Central employee running the train. And then from Osaka to next, it's actually JR West employee running the train. So there is a handover at that station also. And yeah, especially the last train, because in Japan, high-speed railways works only on till midnight. And so last train, they will definitely coordinate. So if a train coming to Osaka from Hiroshima is getting slightly delayed, they will make sure that at least the next ones are slightly offered. But of course, there are limits to that because the maintenance start kicking in and it delays everything else. So yeah, but there's some adjustment and people, they coordinate with each other nicely about that. Same goes for the buses services, the taxi services. All of them rely on this information, especially about the last train, more importantly. Yeah, a lot of incidents reported, also available in the literature on that. Yeah.
It's just a proprietary term, actually, but
Yeah, the full form of the Cosmos I really don't know, but it's basically a sensor integrated system which will have track related information, the live running train status information. There are hundreds of thousands of sensors that they have installed to monitor the weather patterns, rain, air pressure, air speed, wind speed, all those things, snow is happening or not. Everything comes into a centralized database. And it is also a long-term and short-term understanding. Long-term in a way that you will have some estimate of how many people are going to travel tomorrow, expected tomorrow or a week later. So it helps you schedule faster. It will also have information on which train is in the yard, which train is under maintenance, which train is actually running on the track, how much time will it take for it to be at a particular location so that you can plan its routing or rerouting properly. So it's a very complex, comprehensive system where every information comes and they actually are able to use this to make very quick decisions, right? So, and this was very clear right from the beginning of when they conceptualized the high-speed railway. They actually came up with these kind of systems at 1964. So it's been, yeah, it's a proprietary system. We don't know much, but in those 3 books, there is a diagram, conceptual diagram of that. You can read about that.
I mean, this is specific to delays, but we were also, in essence, able to learn about the corporate philosophy, since they're private, I'm just calling them corporate, but the organizational philosophy is that service matters the most. They have to always be providing good service by reducing passenger inconvenience, but also constantly providing timely and effective service. So your decisions and your design decisions or your management decisions have to do with, okay, what are we doing to either reduce passenger inconvenience if something happens, or are we constantly making decisions to help the timely and effective service be provided? And again, based on the basic assumption that, of course, safety matters above all else. So we believe that there are 3 pillars to achieving this continuous service improvement, which is the development of human capital. Like I said, there's a very advanced technology in place, but if you don't have the people there to be able to use it for you, it's useless. It's just an empty box of wires and switches. So you're updating the software, you're updating the technology always, and at the same time, you're making sure that you have the HR ready to leverage this technology. And then, of course, there's the pressure on the existing infrastructure itself. So you can't just use it all you want. Is the maintenance in place? Are you monitoring? Is there any damage? Where is the degradation happening? Integrated operations and maintenance has to work together with the people using the services, because otherwise, you won't be able to identify risks that are either coming up or things that may miss your eye because the people running and operating and interfacing with the consumer or the transport, the users are able to see I would say the health of the facilities probably more than operations and maintenance in some cases. Okay. So you always want to develop your technology and improve it, and you always want to make sure that your people can use it well, and you always want to make sure the health of your facilities are operated and maintained properly. And to do this, the intra-organizational coordination, effective decision making within the organization is very, very important. Historically, in a lot of companies, you will see that maybe they are quite separated and independent, and you don't want to step on anybody's toes, so you make sure your operation and maintenance schedule does not interfere with the other schedule or something like that. But if you have to be able to talk together to identify issues more timely issues as they arise. Research and development capacity building efforts are necessary and vital. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. And obviously, if you are a company and you have to pay your human resources and your maintenance people and your technology R&D development team, the financial management becomes key. Okay. All right. So this is a little bit more details about the financial management, which became possible because of a change in legislation and the privatization that happened in Japan as well. The argument that is made and the justification of privatization as a success story in Japan has a lot to do with freedom in corporate governance and decision making that now the management of the JR company has, rather than as a public operator, they need permission to do certain things, to make changes to the network. So that is a story. That's a narrative and justification you will hear a lot. A lot of management decisions after privatization no longer need to be approved at the governmental level once it was completely privatized, and that helped make a lot of the efficient decision making that had to occur at these three levels of technology development, human capacity development, as well as operation maintenance decisions.
Maybe some of the engineers don't know the term corporate governance and corporate management, but corporate management essentially deals with day-to-day operations or executions and the decisions that you would make to make things run smooth. And corporate governance is the policy within the organization, right? So before the privatization, the people who were making these decisions on how will we operate, what are the plans for future investment and all, they were actually within the government body also. Like it's somewhat similar to what we currently have in our Indian railway system, Ministry of Railways and the Chairman Railway Board. So they are very integrated and work together with each other. But that used to cause a lot of delays in terms of getting approval. Whatever you do takes a long time for files to process and things like that. But since 1987, financial decisions and other things or the day-to-day things, unless things are safety critical, they need not go to government approval. So as long as, for example, anything to do with service enhancement does not require an approval from the government agency, as long as it is under legal regulation of a country, as well as it adheres to all the financial pre-approved rules and regulation. If it is something which is safety critical, for example, change in technology, finding some new type of equipment and all, change in procedures, maintenance, that yes, that requires approval, but otherwise they have a lot more control. So this enabled a lot more efficiency in the system purely by the separating the people who were making the laws versus people who were actually implementing them. So yeah, this is given as a very successful case on why it worked in Japan the way it finally ended up working.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting to think about other countries. So it's immediately as a corporate governance researcher, people would say that's dangerous. If like they're also doing the operation and maintenance, what about the safety standards and are they regulating themselves? That's very dangerous. So I worked in Japan. There's a lot of public there's a public philosophy in the private sector, I would say, and responsibility for safety. So it has worked so far. In Europe, you'll find a different story about if you outsource it. We'll talk about this as well later on, but if the trust isn't there for a company to regulate itself, let's set up an independent body to do the monitoring, and that's needed. And then you have maybe in like France, you're swinging back and forth. It was privatized, and everybody's frustrated with the quality of the service, and it's been renationalized. So the government can restructure, I think, and try and improve services. Every country will struggle with this as well, and coming up with the appropriate institutional structure is important, I think. I remember in Korea, a railway a railway researcher I was talking to was saying Minister of Railways in Korea is also a political post, not a bureaucratic or a technical post. In Japan, it probably used to be like that, but now it's a corporate post, so the management will vote for the most likely, or the person who will make them the most money, I guess. But the government also has some voting rights because they own stock as well. There's very interesting ways people decide to disperse power in large organizations, I think. Okay. So let's zoom out at the whole framework. This is an example of a policy or regulation impacting how a specific country can actually manage their HSR system. Because whether or not it's private or public or semi-public-private and integrated systems will change the ability for you to either govern or manage specific elements of the system. And it matters to your bottom line as well. This is showing the average cost of each new line that was created by JR early on. So in order. So the first line, the second line, third, fourth, fifth. So the Tohoku, as I mentioned, the successful first couple lines were relatively cheap. Well, this is how much it costed them to create per kilometer. Because it was a success and there was revenue coming in, they were mandated to create new lines. So from a corporate finance perspective, okay, now they have this much money to invest in expanding their business, and they started expanding their lines. But that's because it's a trade-off of your efficiency as well. If you start expanding, what ended up happening was the third and fourth lines were very expensive. Trying to use your internal revenue to expand the business made the whole business quite inefficient. And so if you calculated the kilometer dollar or rupee or yen value, it was too expensive for them to basically make money. And then this is where the financial strain again started hitting the JR. Financial stress, probably losing lots of money for the government and in debt. So they created a new mechanism for the fourth and lines onwards, where you were no longer allowed to use the internal revenue that you have for existing lines. You can't use that to expand your business. It basically is the simplified way of explaining it, is that, okay, now it's project finance. You have to find new investors or new sources of investors for the new lines and do a new feasibility and figure out how you have to finance the new lines using, basically, they would partner up with the local region governments or the railway companies in these other regions and ask them to help with the financing. And that's brought down the cost of the expansions. So this is the new comprehensive system happening here. Tohoku was the first one, right? This is Tohoku, Hokuriku, Kyushu. So northeast and central northern and the very southwest Japan. It's cheaper, but yeah, as I said earlier, they're not making money. So it's not, this is again the difficulty of construction cost versus, I guess, operational efficiency are different calculations you have to make. So right now these lines are not actually able to make money, even though they were able to create their facilities relatively at lower cost compared to the earlier lines. It's much lower. So the question was, so the demand risk, bringing the conversation back to the demand risk and basically not able to generate enough revenue, meaning, so I guess they weren't running enough trains. The schedule is very much demand related. So if there were no commuters, much fewer trains running in these regions, yes, for sure.
So where the demand is high, so there are like the frequency of running the trains is higher, and where it is lower, so it has gone lower.
as frequent trains when you go in the outskirts of Japan, as you would call it. Yeah, it's not as frequent. But accessibility becomes important because people want to have a high-speed railway closer in your neighborhood. Yeah.
High demand cities, that also changes. Like weekdays when people are using for their business or something.
But there's no day where there's no service. I don't think there's a day like today there are no trains running. That kind of days are not possible, not there. Even in COVID, they did not stop the service. They used to run empty trains because it was actually very difficult to reschedule the timetable. So it makes sense for them to keep running the machinery even though if it is empty, because rescheduling and storing all that trains in a yard becomes a much bigger challenge. So it was like a machinery running but empty, and that's where losses you will see. It was a very interesting case. It took them almost 3-4 months to adjust the frequency down. So it was okay for them to keep running empty trains because everything was soap in, everything was working fine, but except there was no people.
The weekend, yeah, there's usually a different schedule, but I'm not sure about high-speed rail actually. They do definitely increase schedules during holidays, like high peak seasons. They will increase frequency in for projected increase in demand, and they have extra trains in the morning and night for like fireworks festivals and these kinds of special events. You'll see extra services running as well. Yeah. Okay. All right. But this graph is just sort of showing per kilometer that it does get expensive depending on how you decide to finance the project. But either way, it is still very, very, very expensive, right? I think Professor Nika was telling me there's only a couple lines in the world that, from a corporate finance perspective, are actually making money from their HSR services, right?
Yeah. So
from a transportation demand perspective.
So I think there are only 3 lines in the world where purely using the passenger revenue, they are able to recover the cost of their current operations as well as the original cost that went into developing the infrastructure. There are only 3 segments. One is the Tokyo-Osaka, which was the world's first high-speed railway. Second is the Paris-Lyon, which is the Europe's first high-speed railway. And then there is the third one, which is, I think, Shanghai to Beijing, which is the China's first high-speed railway. But a lot of other lines make profit on operation basis. So if you do not want passenger revenues to recover the original cost, but just make profitable, efficient businesses, a lot of high-speed railways in the world are able to do that. So that has been the norm reasonably recently, that governments think this as a public expenditure, that just the construction cost of it is financed, but so that you are not stressing the operator for the entire service life, and operator has sufficient margin to keep on providing efficient services, which is also beneficial for everyone, right? So, and the initial amount they see as an investment to the construction industry and so on and so forth. So that's how they can justify. But yeah, purely from operations, they are not able to recover the original sunk cost. Yeah.
If you were maybe an investor or you're trying to make money off of transporting people, HSR is maybe not the best investment, like if that's your motivation. But of course, people still invest in it because there are other benefits, right? So the demand factor is one of the other, these keywords came up in the discussion just now. Time cost trade-off. So it's how, is it worth it for me considering how I travel right now to this other destination? Time savings. If you save enough time, you'll be willing to use this service if it's reasonably priced. So it's a combination of the time saving and the cost, right? This is a graph showing how much time you'll spend door to door. Again, interoperability, people were mentioning. Maybe 3.5 or 3 hours and 10 minutes to get to a major station in the States using HSR compared to a car or a plane door to door. So in the States, the argument here is anywhere from just the 3 to 4 hour travel time on an HSR is sort of the sweet spot in terms of the distance you're able to cover because of the high speeds and then the door-to-door convenience. This is for Mumbai Ahmedabad as well. So 2 hours and 7 minutes to get from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. Today, or this is the estimated travel time, I believe. Whereas it's taking you 9 hours by bus, 8 hours by car, an hour and 30 minutes by the train. So it is important by the plane, sorry. So it is important. The biggest competitor, I would say, when you're doing feasibility reports as well for high-speed rail, is that you have to compare it to the plane for air travel and make it enticing for somebody who's already using air travel. So in Japan, it's already cheaper to take the plane to these places, to the major train stations, than it would be to take HSR, because you save so much more time taking the train from Tokyo to Osaka than you would taking the plane. So LLCs and other plane companies have already responded, and they have to offer cheaper ticket prices to fly from Tokyo to Osaka in comparison to the train. Okay. 2 hours and 7 minutes. An hour and 30 minutes from Mumbai to Ahmedabad by plane. Is that true?
No, I think that's the
Travel time in the airplane.
journey time.
Okay,
not
okay.
the
Oh, okay,
excess
okay.
and the
But
waiting time and everything.
access egress it would be longer. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this time cost saving, or the time saving here, and then the pricing point is an important decision that has to be made. How do you price this value, the value of time here? But it's not just time that you're saving. From a government or environmental perspective, you're also saving energy, depending on your source of energy. I guess you're hoping it's not fossil fuel based, but it is a centralized service, so you can enjoy a lot of energy savings if it's an electric network. Energy efficiency, passenger kilometer per unit of energy, so it's by far the most efficient mode of transport in terms of the number of passengers you can carry and the source of energy. And CO2 emissions as well. Yeah, much more efficient per passenger compared to the automobile or the plane. Again, here, this can also tie into your national energy development plan or your energy generation plan, if you can use renewable sources for this, or nuclear, or whatever it is, as opposed to fossil fuel burning. That can also contribute to long-term sustainability from an energy perspective. We'll take a break after this slide. So time, energy, and safety. Some other people mentioned safety. Safety is a basic requirement for any public transports. But even with that said, no matter how safe you drive, no matter how safe your bus driver is, just out of the design of the structure, and just you're not having any collisions on a dedicated track, for example. It's just so much safer for the passenger to take a train as opposed to a car and a ferry. All these airplane crashes recently are freaking me out. I don't know what's going on. It should be safer. I used to say, oh, it's safe to plane. You don't drive if you're afraid of taking the plane. You should never get in a car. That's how I used to sarcastically tell my parents it's okay for me to fly. But now I'm kind of scared. It's like, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, in Toronto, that's my hometown. It was upside down, and I saw it was the flaming. It looked similar to the tragic plane crash, and it was very scary. I don't know what's happening. But it's also part of the discussion that happened during Professor Nikhil's research here. This is part of the organizational complexity that has a direct impact on safety. The safety standards, the airplane manufacturers, the air transit controllers, the operating companies, airlines, they're all managing the services in a very convoluted way. And it's somewhere in there, something is happening and safety is being sacrificed. And these accidents are happening. And it's very scary to think about. So that's what we want to prevent from also happening in the HSR.